Welcome to the DingeCast.
Glad to be here. Today, we're digging into something pretty complex. It's about the search for historical truth, especially, when it gets tangled up in the online world.
Right, this whole landscape of online experts versus, say, traditional academia, it gets pretty polarized.
Extremely. And that friction, that feeling of having to pick a side, that's really what we want to unpack today.
Exactly. So our mission here is to look at some source material about a really incredible archaeological site in Peru, Sacsayhuaman. We want to use it to show how good research can sometimes get derailed.
Yeah, derailed by things like public accusations, maybe some groupthink, and definitely a lot of misinformation that spreads like wildfire online.
So what we've done is synthesize different kinds of sources. We've got actual reports from current excavations happening right now.
Active field work.
And we've also looked at commentary on this very public clash between a popular online figure and an academic.
Our goal really is to give you, the listener, a more balanced view, give you the context you need to sort of navigate these often conflicting claims.
Because the online debate can get toxic, no doubt.
Yeah.
But the actual work happening on the ground, that's rigorous, and it's genuinely fascinating stuff.
It really is.
Okay, so let's start there. Let's focus on the positive first, the actual groundwork. You mentioned current work at Sacsayhuaman and Cusco.
Yes, specifically a project called the Chincana Project. It's trying to map this unseen world beneath the surface.
Chincanas. What does that mean exactly?
It's Quechua for labyrinth. The project, led by researchers Jorge E. Calero Flores and Mildred Fernandez Palomino, is investigating this rumored network of subterranean passages.
Tunnels under Cusco.
That's the idea. Old chronicles, colonial ones mostly, suggest they run under the city. They might even connect the Temple of the Sun, the Coricancha, all the way up to Sacsayhuaman itself.
Wow. How long are we talking?
Well, one main route is reported to be around 11,750 meters long.
That's nearly 2 kilometers of potential tunnels. That's incredible.
It is ambitious, but they're not just going on, folklore or rumor. Their methods are really rigorous.
So it's multidisciplinary. What kind of methods? You mentioned chronicles.
Yeah, they started with historical and archival research. They're combing through those colonial and early post-colonial records, think diaries, official reports, narratives from the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries.
Stuff written by Spanish observers back then.
Often, yes.
Right.
And these documents record indigenous traditions, legends that consistently describe these underground routes. So that's the historical bedrock, the starting point.
Okay, so you have the historical whispers, the legends. Then what? How do they test it?
Then comes the hard science. They use geophysical methods, primarily ground-penetrating radar GPR.
Right, sending waves into the ground to map what's below.
Exactly. It detects changes in the soil, rock, voids. And they also use acoustic prospecting.
What's that involve? Like listening to the ground?
Sort of, yeah. They might strike metal plates or send sound pulses down and then listen for the echoes. Different echoes mean different things. Solid rock, loose soil, or maybe a cavity. A hollow space.
And this isn't just theory, right? The sources say they actually found things recently?
They did. In 2025, they apparently did 45 days of pretty intensive excavation work. They focused on the Rodadero Suchuna sector, which is near a Pachamama temple.
Okay, and what did they find?
They found underground voids, actual cavernous spaces, some up to 2 meters high.
2 meters? That's significant. How deep?
Sometimes beneath less than a meter of soil and rock, so quite shallow in places.
Wow. So they're actively finding these potential parts of the labyrinth.
It seems so. Now the work is to, painstakingly confirm entrances, map the extent, figure out the function. Were they ceremonial, strategic escape routes? Just passages. It's meticulous work.
And it's transparent scientific work, which brings up an interesting point about collaboration. Our sources mention that even some, let's say, high-profile, sometimes controversial figures, like Graham Hancock, have been seen out there.
Yes, documented in the field with credible teams, gathering evidence.
And being transparent about it to their, very large audiences.
And that right there is a great model, actually. It shows what happens when the focus is on gathering the evidence, doing the careful work first.
Before jumping to the big, maybe speculative claims.
Exactly. It prioritizes the discovery process itself, not just, winning an argument online. It's about the work.
But unfortunately, that collaborative spirit often seems to evaporate once people step away from the dig site and get back online.
Yeah. That's where things get messy.
Which brings us to the next point. This polarization problem. The moment these sites become fodder for public debate online.
This is where you really see the camps forming. And we have a pretty stark example in the sources, the clash between Professor Hoops and the popularizer Jimmy Corsetti.
Right. The accusation was pretty strong. Professor Hoops accused Corsetti of being racist for suggesting the Incas didn't build Sacsayhuaman.
Yeah, that's a heavy charge. It immediately shuts down conversation, really.
Does. But playing devil's advocate for a second, doesn't an academic have some responsibility there?
Okay.
To defend the historical record, especially against claims that might seem to diminish indigenous achievements? Maybe sometimes a strong response is needed, even if it polarizes.
That's a really important question. It gets into communication ethics versus historical responsibility. And the reason that specific accusation hits so hard is historical context.
So,
Well, the idea that the Incas couldn't possibly have built something so massive that they must have had help from some lost super race that echoes old, frankly destructive colonial thinking.
right, the idea that indigenous cultures weren't capable on their own.
Exactly. So even if someone doesn't intend it maliciously, suggesting the Incas weren't the builders taps into that history. It's often seen as cultural erasure.
And that context is maybe what popularizers miss when they throw around terms like lost ancient civilization without much nuance. It can sound like they're dismissing the actual Inca accomplishments.
Absolutely. And that's why academics often react so strongly. They see this pattern. But there's a middle ground here.
Yeah.
A more objective, fact-based middle ground that, honestly, both sides could embrace. And that's the concept of cultural layering.
Cultural layering.
Meaning the Incas themselves didn't claim to be the sole builders. The site wasn't built from scratch on empty land. It was built on earlier foundations.
Okay, so break that down. What cultures are we talking about at Sacsayhuaman specifically? What did who build?
Well, we have pretty good evidence, things like carbon-14 dating, ceramic analysis. It shows the initial foundational structures belong to the Kilauea culture.
Kilke, when were they around?
Roughly 900 to 1200 AD. They were in the Cusco area before the Inca Empire really took off. They built the first walls, the basic layout, usually using smaller, more manageable field stones.
So the Kilke basically laid the groundwork, literally.
Literally and figuratively, yes. Then, starting around the 13th century and really picking up steam in the 15th century under rulers like Pachacuti, the Incas came in.
And they expanded on the Kill Foundation.
Massively. This is when we see those incredible, enormous polygonal blocks being quarried, moved somehow, and fitted together with that famous precision.
The ones that fuel all the speculation.
Precisely. Those huge stones, sometimes 5 or 6 meters tall. That's the hallmark of Inca imperial engineering, built upon the earlier Kilauea base.
Okay, that distinction is crucial. So the argument isn't really whether some pre-Inca group was involved. The Kilauea clearly were.
Right.
The debate, or maybe the controversy, often centers on the capability of the Inca to handle those specific giant stones.
Exactly. And Professor Hoops, for instance, could have used the Kilauea evidence to educate, to provide that nuance, explain the layering, while still defending the Inca's incredible skill with the later megalithic construction.
Instead of just the accusation.
Right, and Corsetti perhaps could have framed his questions around that documented layering rather than using language that, intentionally or not, aligns with minimizing Inca abilities.
So it sounds like a missed opportunity on both sides.
Yeah.
Communication breakdown, prioritizing, I don't know, winning the point over actual discussion.
That's often how it plays out. It's the real tragedy here. When you get locked into your team or your camp, whether you're rigidly academic or fully into the fringe theories, you risk getting trapped by groupthink.
You stop thinking critically because you're defending the team.
Your priority shifts, yeah. It becomes about defending the group's position, not necessarily pursuing the truth wherever it leads, even if it's messy or contradicts your side.
Which raises a question for you, the listener. Who actually benefits when we frame this search for understanding as some kind of war between camps?
Because, as our sources hinted, divide and conquer typically doesn't benefit the public. It just creates noise.
And that division feels like it's actively fueled by the way the internet works now. Which leads us nicely into the next section, this broader challenge of misinformation.
Oh, yeah. Social media especially. People just seem to eat it up without question, as one source put it.
It's almost designed for that, isn't it? The algorithms seem to reward conflict and sensation over careful explanation.
Absolutely. Think about it. Rage bait. Content drives clicks, shares, comments, engagement. A calm, detailed explanation of GPR results just can't compete, algorithmically speaking, with a short, shocking video claiming aliens melted stones.
And now, with things like AI getting so powerful, generating convincing text, images, even video, It feels like it's getting even easier to spread misinformation
Right.
and harder for people to spot it.
Exponentially faster and harder to trace back to a source. It makes critical thinking more crucial than ever, but also more difficult.
We actually have a really stark example of this from the sources, something memorable that shows the danger.
Ah, yes. The melted stone image.
That's the one. From Lake Titicaca, right?
Yep.
It gets shared constantly online.
Constantly. And it's presented as absolute proof of some ancient, lost technology that could, soften rock, make it flow like putty. The picture looks pretty convincing if you don't know the backstory.
But it's easily debunked, as you pointed out.
Totally. That specific image, the one that goes viral, it's actually a modern sculpture.
Modern?
Yeah, created in recent decades by a Spanish artist, José Manuel Castro Lopez. He works with stone in amazing ways, making it look fluid.
And you can verify this easily.
A simple Google search takes maybe 10, 15 seconds. You'll find the artist, his work, interviews, yet that picture keeps circulating as ancient mystery proof.
Wow. That really highlights the problem. People are maybe hungry for these alternative histories, but they're bypassing basic fact-checking.
Or the fact-checking just doesn't spread as far or as fast as the original exciting falsehood.
So, given this environment, what does it mean for the academic community? The ones who have the rigorous data but maybe aren't always the best at communicating it to a wide audience?
Well, I think it means they really need to shift their approach. They need proactive engagement. Meaning, academia can't really afford to just wait for misinformation to blow up online and then, maybe years later, publish a response in an obscure journal that nobody reads.
They need to be where the conversation is happening.
Exactly. Be more active on these public platforms, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, whatever comes next. Share the work, explain the methods, show the GPR data, talk about the complexities like cultural layering. Provide that solid foundation.
I like that. Sort of taking the rigor of something like the Gincana Project, that mix of history and science, and communicating the process more transparently.
Yeah, like short videos explaining Kilke versus Inca stonework, or maybe live Q&As from a dig site when possible.
Showing the evidence, showing the uncertainties too.
It's about providing a compelling, accessible alternative before the rage bait takes over. Show people why the actual messy reality of discovery is fascinating in its own right, even without aliens or lost supertech. Beat them to the punch with good information.
Okay, so let's try and tie these threads together. For you, the listener, wading through all this, what are the key takeaways from our deep dive on Sacsayhuaman and the surrounding controversies?
I think there are two main paths forward to keep in mind. First, really appreciate the kind of work being done on the ground. That painstaking, multidisciplinary effort using GPR, digging into archives, careful excavation. That's how we genuinely learn about complex, layered sites like Sacsayhuaman. That's the path to real discovery.
So value the process, the actual research. And the second takeaway.
Recognize how toxic the polarization can be, whether it's academics dismissing public interest out of hand or popularizers making wild claims without evidence. Getting stuck in a camp just hinders understanding.
And be critical of what you see online.
Absolutely. Basic fact-checking, questioning sources. It's essential to avoid falling for simple misinformation, like that sculpture being passed off as ancient tech. Think critically before you share.
So we've talked about the Kilke culture laying the foundation, and the Inca building upon it with those massive stones. The layering is clear.
Right. History is layered. Sacsayhuaman is a prime example.
But that leads to one final thought, something provocative maybe, for you to mull over.
Go on.
The history of the Cusco region goes back much further than the Kilke, further than 900 AD. We know about other significant pre-Inca cultures.
Like the Wari Empire, which was huge and influential, or even earlier local groups like the Kodakali, Chanapada, Marcavel.
Exactly. So given that we know history is layered there, and projects like the Gincana Project are literally just scratching the surface of what's underneath, how much of the Sacsayhuaman story might still be incomplete? If really extensive research hasn't definitively ruled out whether these even earlier civilizations had some role, maybe foundational, maybe strategic, at that specific site.
That's a great question. If the Kilke built on something, what was that something? We know the Incas built on the Kilke, but how far back does the human interaction with that specific hilltop go? We've likely only scratched the surface, haven't we?
Something to think about.